It was one of these nights when the rain is pounding so hard against the windshield that you can barely see the road ahead. My name is John, and for more than 20 years, the back of a truck has been both my office and my home. Tonight in particular, it was taking me along a route I rarely chose, an isolated path into the heart of the UK's darkness and storms. The delivery was urgent, one of those jobs you can't turn down, no matter how grim the journey. The final destination was a small town, one that barely appears on the map, but the cargo, well, it wasn't waiting for anyone. My story really begins when, in the middle of that hellish night, my old friend, the truck, decides to play a trick on me. The engine, always so reliable, began to fail, and there was nowhere around where I could seek refuge, except, of course, for a gas station, abandoned. The place looked like it had come straight out of a horror movie, with its broken windows and sign hanging to one side, as if it was about to fall over. But what drove me there wasn't curiosity or a desire for adventure. It was necessity pure and simple. I needed to fix the truck, or the delivery would fail. And failure wasn't in my plans. As I approached the station, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It wasn't just the cold or the damp. It was something more. Something that whispered with the wind, that moved in the shadows. I decided to go inside, looking for any useful tools, perhaps some vestige of civilization left in that godforsaken place. But what I found was something I could never have imagined. A presence. Malevolent, ancient, and deeply terrifying. It didn't reveal itself immediately, but I could feel in the depths of my being that I wasn't alone. And then it showed itself to me. Not in a way that I could see with my eyes, but in a way that engraved itself on my soul. It was there, in that abandoned gas station, that my world changed forever. Trying to stay calm, I started looking for a way out. But the place seemed to have a life of its own, turning into a trap. The doors that had once been open now refused to budge, as if someone or something had locked them. My heart was pounding so hard that I could swear that every beat echoed through the empty corridors of the station. The entity, taking advantage of my growing terror, began to play with my mind, creating illusions that brought up fears I didn't even know I had. Shadows writhed on the walls, turning into living nightmares, and malevolent whispers filled the air, telling stories of lost souls who had made the mistake of stopping at that gas station. As I fought against the dread that consumed me, I found a door half hidden behind a broken bookcase, leading to a room that seemed to have been preserved in time. Inside, there was a collection of strange objects, artifacts that seemed to have been gathered from all corners of the world, each carrying an aura of mystery and despair. But what caught my attention most was a set of diaries, dusty and weathered, spread out on a table that seemed to serve as an altar to the unknown. Leafing through the pages, I discovered accounts of others like me, drawn to that post by circumstances beyond their control, each story ending more horribly than the last. With each page turned, the reality around me seemed to distort even more, as if the words in the diaries were triggering a reaction in the very fabric of the place. And it was then that the entity decided to show me a vision, a future so bleak and desolate that it made me question my own sanity. It was a warning, or perhaps a promise, of what awaited me if I refused to accept the pact it offered. As this vision consumed me, a thought settled in my mind. There was something about that post, some ancient and evil connection to rituals forgotten by time, rituals that perhaps held the key to my salvation or my doom. Hopelessness began to set in, as cold as the night outside. But I couldn't afford to give in to despair. While leafing through yet another diary, I stumbled upon something that could be my salvation. Descriptions of ancient rituals, so ancient that the paper seemed to want to disintegrate at the touch. They spoke of portals, of entities brought into our reality through offerings and forgotten words. For the first time since I entered that cursed post, I felt a thread of hope. Perhaps, if I could understand these rituals, there would be a way to reverse what had been done, to close the portal that had allowed that entity to enter our world. But the entity wasn't willing to let me explore this possibility without a fight. As I tried to decipher the rituals, it increased its pressure, its presence becoming almost unbearable. Wounds began to appear on my body, as if invisible claws were tearing me apart, and the hallucinations intensified, showing me visions of a future in which I was less than nothing, a mere plaything in the hands of forces I could barely comprehend. Between these moments of torture, I was able to glimpse the true nature of the entity. It wasn't just a demon. It was something older, an evil that existed long before humanity itself was aware of such concepts. And somehow the abandoned gas station was the center of its power, the place where the veil between worlds was thinnest. Armed with this knowledge, I began what seemed to be an impossible battle. Using the artifacts found in the secret room and the words from the diaries, I tried to replicate the rituals. They were complex and required more than just reading. They required a piece of my soul, a willingness to go through the unknown. And for a brief moment, I thought I had succeeded. A light shone, so intense that for a second, all that existed was that blinding glare. But then something went wrong. The light extinguished as quickly as it had appeared, and the darkness that followed it was deeper, denser. The entity, far from being banished, seemed to have gained strength, its fury manifesting itself in a storm of energy that threatened to engulf me. I had failed, and the price of that failure would be more terrible than I could have imagined. The air became heavy, charged with an energy that seemed to distort the very reality around me. The gas station, already a place of nightmares, turned into a labyrinth of terror, where each corridor unfolded into more darkness and despair. But it was within this darkness that I found a new clue. In the worn pages of another diary, I discovered an old inscription, almost erased by time, which suggested a way to close the portal once and for all. A sacrifice. The idea of a sacrifice paralyzed me. It wasn't just the prospect of death that frightened me, but the weight of knowing that perhaps, in order to end this cycle of terror, I would have to offer myself. The entity, sensing my hesitation, took advantage of the moment to reveal itself in all its horrible glory. It was no longer a shadow on the walls or a whispering voice in the wind. It now presented itself as a vision of pure terror, a creature from nightmares that defied description. Even in the face of this manifestation of pure evil, I knew I couldn't give up. Armed with the artifacts and the knowledge I had acquired from the diaries, I began to prepare the banishment ritual. Each step a challenge to my sanity. It was a complex process, requiring not only the recitation of ancient words, but also a deep connection with the forces I was trying to appease. For a moment, the ritual seemed to succeed. The entity roared in fury and pain as the light of my determination seemed to purify the gas station, its walls shaking under the power of the spell. But then, just when victory seemed within reach, the unimaginable happened. The entity, in a last-ditch effort to survive, hurled a wave of dark energy at me, a power so overwhelming that my entire being was consumed by indescribable pain. The reality around me began to shatter, the gas station and the entity fading into a storm of chaos. I had underestimated the power I was dealing with, and now, it seemed, I would pay with my very existence. The darkness closed in on me, and for a moment, all that remained was silence. A silence that seemed to foreshadow the end. But even in the face of total darkness, a spark of hope remained, whispering that perhaps the battle was not yet lost. In this realm of darkness into which I was thrown, a revelation struck me like a bolt of lightning. The gas station, now a monument to chaos, was the key. The souls of the truck drivers who had passed through here before me, now trapped in an eternal cycle of torment, wandered like shadows around me. Their voices, once distant whispers became clear, each narrating their own fall from grace. But among these voices, I found a spark of light, a spark of understanding. They, like me, had been drawn here not by chance, but by a force that constantly sought to feed on despair and fear. It was then that I realized the true nature of the necessary sacrifice. It wasn't just an act of desperation, but a gesture of defiance against the darkness that was spreading before me. The ancient inscription I had found in the diaries spoke of a sacrifice. Yes, but one that carried with it the power to banish the darkness back into the abyss from which it had emerged. Armed with this new understanding, I began to prepare myself for what needed to be done. Every step I took, every word of the ritual I recited, felt like I was approaching a long-determined destination. The ritual demanded everything of me. My voice, my will, and finally, my life. As I recited the ancient words, the energy around me began to vibrate, a light shining faintly through the darkness. The entity, feeling its influence waning, fought with renewed fury, but there was something different now. I was no longer alone. The souls of the truck drivers were joining me, their combined light strengthening the ritual, defying the darkness. With a final cry of defiance, I completed the ritual. The explosion of light was so intense that for a moment I thought I had been annihilated along with the darkness. But when the light dissipated, I found myself in a different place, a limbo between the world of the living and the realm of shadows. The entity was there, weakened, its form no longer so terrifying but still threatening. We were now on an even playing field, and I knew I had only one chance to end this once and for all. The decision to continue with the sacrifice, knowing that it would mean the end of my journey, didn't come easily. But there was a clarity in my mind that I had never felt before. If my end could ensure that no others were lost in this post of horrors, then it would be worth it. With that resolution firm in my heart, I set off into the unknown, ready to do whatever it took to seal the entity in the darkness from which it should never have emerged. In that space between worlds, reality seemed flexible, obeying the laws of a logic I could barely comprehend. The entity, though weakened, still tried to cling to existence, throwing promises of unimaginable riches and powers at me. But there was something in its voice, a trace of desperation that told me it was on the right track. I had no illusions about what was at stake. My decision had been made, and there would be no turning back. The real fight was about to begin, a battle not just for my soul, but for the fate of all those the entity had imprisoned. With a determination that can only come from accepting one's own end, I began the last phase of the ritual. The words flowed out of me as if they were fueled by a force beyond my own, each syllable cutting through the air with an energy that seemed to reshape the world around me. The entity roared in fury, its form writhing in an attempt to escape the net of light that now enveloped it. But the ritual was clear, its purpose stronger than any resistance it could offer. Fire was the next step, a purifying element, but also a destructive one. I knew that by lighting this flame, I would be sealing my own fate as much as that of the entity. And so, with a heavy but firm heart, I set fire to the gas station, the fire quickly consuming the decaying structure and everything inside it. The flames rose high, illuminating the night like a beacon of hope and despair intertwined. As the fire did its work, I could feel the entity struggling in its last attempts to escape, its threats and pleas blending into an agonizing cacophony. But then something extraordinary happened. In the midst of the flames, I saw the souls that had been imprisoned by the entity begin to break free, rising like sparks towards a sky now clear of clouds. It was a spectacle of beauty and sadness, a reminder of the price of freedom. In the end, when the flames calmed down and the last trace of the entity faded, only ashes remained where the gas station once stood. I stood on a threshold, aware of the sacrifice I had made and the peace I had finally won for those who had suffered before me. Although my fate was sealed, there was a serenity in knowing that the malevolent entity was now banished, unable to afflict the world of the living. At that moment, between life and what comes after, I knew that my journey had come to an end. But I had achieved something few could claim, a true act of courage in the face of absolute evil. In the final moments, as the world I knew crumbled into ash and light, a strange calm came over me. There was no more pain, no more fear, just the clarity that I had fulfilled my purpose. The entity, that force of malice and darkness that had tried to subvert me with promises of power and wealth, was now silenced, its presence just a distant memory in the purifying light of the fire. However, even on my last journey, a revelation presented itself. The gas station, the epicenter of all that horror, was more than just an abandoned building. It was a catalyst, a meeting point for energies that transcended human understanding, and I had been the instrument to interrupt a cycle of suffering and despair. The destruction of the post was not the end, but a new beginning, a chance for those trapped by the entity's machinations to find rest. My consciousness began to rise, moving away from the ritual site, and I could see the fire slowly dying down, leaving behind not only ruins, but also a sense of peace. The entity had offered worlds, treasures that would bring kings to their knees. But in the end, the real wealth I found was the liberation of souls that had been held captive for too long. Each flame that consumed the post was a testament to their freedom, a monument to their resistance. And then, amid the ashes of what had been my last battle, I realized that my own soul was preparing to move on. The fire in its destruction had created something new, a bridge between the old world and the next. I was ready to cross it, taking with me the certainty that I had made the right choice. The entity, in its arrogance, never understood the strength of the human spirit, our capacity for sacrifice in the name of the greater good. Now, looking back at that moment of decision, I see that my journey was destined to end there, in the heart of the flames. But the story I left behind, marked in the ashes of the gas station and in the memories of those who still walk the earth, is a story of triumph, a reminder that even the deepest darkness can be overcome by the light of a single courageous heart. As I drove away, I was granted one last glimpse of the gas station. Now, no more than a pile of smoking ruins under the slowly approaching dawn. It was an end, yes, but also a new beginning. I had left behind a tangible world, but the struggle I had waged, the victory I had achieved over the dark entity, would resonate through the ages, a spark of hope in the perpetual darkness. Not long afterwards, a new truck driver drove past what was left of the station. He felt a chill, an inexplicable sensation that told him not to stop. Among the rubble, almost hidden by the nature that was beginning to claim its space, was a diary. My diary, partially burnt but still legible. It contained not only descriptions of the horrors I had faced, but also the lessons I had learned, a guide for those who might find themselves facing a similar evil. My story, now a legend among truck drivers, served as a beacon, a warning of the dangers lurking in the forgotten places of the world. Some listened and carried on, cautious and grateful for the warning. Others, skeptical, questioned the veracity of my words, wondering if they were just the delusions of a man facing his last moments. But the truth was indisputable for those who felt, even briefly, the presence I had faced. Rumors began to emerge, whispers of a new evil inhabiting the ruins of the gas station. Some said the entity had found a new way back into our world. Others believed it was just the memory of past events, so powerful that it manifested itself as a shadow of what it once was. The truth I knew was that the battle I had fought had left marks, scars on the fabric of reality that might never heal completely. Still, the gas station remained, a monument not only to terror, but also to human courage. And although my physical presence had dissipated along with the last flame of that fateful night, my spirit persisted, a silent guardian over those passing by, a whisper in the wind that spoke of danger, but also of hope. The story of a man who faced the unimaginable and prevailed would be told and retold, an eternal reminder that even in the depths of despair, light can be found. The investigation into the gas station and the events that took place there attracted onlookers and skeptics alike, each seeking to understand what really happened that fateful night. Local authorities, fascinated and fearful, scoured the ruins in search of answers, but found little but ashes and unanswered questions. The diary that survived the fire became an intriguing piece of evidence, its burnt pages containing accounts that defied rational logic. As the story spread, becoming legend, truckers and night travelers shared the tales of my battle against the darkness, each narrative adding layers to an already complex story. For some, I had become a mythical figure, a hero who faced absolute evil and won. For others, I was just an ordinary man, driven to extremes by extraordinary circumstances. But regardless of how the story was told, it served as a grim reminder of the dangers that lurk in the forgotten corners of the world. However, despite the warnings and fear that my story inspired, the site of the old gas station did not remain untouched. Curious people and adventurers, attracted by the legend or perhaps by the promise of discovering something beyond the veil of reality, began to visit the ruins, each hoping to find something that the others had missed. And with these visits, rumors of unexplained phenomena persisted, as if the land was still imbued with the energy of everything that had happened. The truth, as always, remained obscure, shrouded in mystery and speculation. Some nights, they said, you could hear the sound of a truck engine in the distance, as if I was still there, making my last run, an eternal ghost on the road. Others spoke of visions of flames that never extinguish, a ghostly light that burns eternally at the site of the gas station. These stories, whether true or not, kept the memory of what happened alive, a testament to the power of the human spirit against the forces of darkness. And so the cycle of tales and legends continued, each new story adding a layer of intrigue and mystery to the site. The gas station, even in ruins, remained a beacon for those fascinated by the unknown, a place where the line between the real and the supernatural was blurred, a permanent reminder of the night when evil was confronted and defeated, not by force, but by courage and sacrifice.